Last year was a bit of a rough year for the economy and for the housing market as a whole, but there was no shortage of luxury properties that exchanged hands. A market analyst found that 2022 was actually the second highest year in history for sales of properties priced at $50 million or more, with 6 homes in the United States alone that sold for $100 million or more. The regions for where these $100 million plus properties are selling are still pretty concentrated in Southern California, New York, and in Florida. And despite a slowing economy, these markets still look very strong for luxury real estate moving forward. Today, we're just going to round up these 8 amazing homes that sold for over $100 million in 2022. Okay, so property number 1 on our list today is out in Malibu, California at 27628 Pacific Coast Highway. This one sold for exactly $100 million back in October of 2022. The house has 8 bedrooms, 12 bathrooms, about 11,000 square feet, and it's sitting on a 3.5 acre bluff overlooking the ocean. The listing agent actually still has the photos of the house up on her page. Here's how it looks from a drone looking back at the house from the west. Here's a shot of the views that you get from the living room when your sliding glass doors are opened up. We've got the kitchen. It's okay, I guess. I mean, it's got plenty of space, but then when you flip the camera around this way, these are the views that you get from your kitchen island. The seller of this property was a family who built a self-storage empire, and the buyer was a media mogul named Byron Allen. Next up, for just a hair more, we have a pair of properties in Manhattan that sold for $101 million in July of 2022. Unfortunately, there's not any photos of this property that I could find online, but there's currently another one for sale in the building for $55 million. This one is on the 7th floor though, and if I scroll through these photos here, we can just kind of get a general idea of what you get if you buy in here. $101 million is a ton of money for a co-op. Even though I know co-ops are more common in New York, that price for a co-op still just shocks me. But the selling price on this place is no doubt for the property itself, plus the location's just about as good as you can get too. It's right off of Central Park and steps away from 5th Avenue, shops, museums, restaurants, all that. Reports say that Julia Koch, the widow of David Koch, was the buyer of this place, and it was sold by the estate of the late co-founder of Microsoft, Paul Allen. For the next one on our list, this is the 6th most expensive property sold last year. We have 3031 and 3115 Brickell Avenue in Florida that traded at just under $106.9 million in September. This deal is also technically a 2-home estate with 12 bedrooms, 21 bathrooms, about 20,000 square feet of living space, and they're sitting directly on Biscayne Bay. And of course, we've got to check out the photos of this 4-acre property. From the outside, it really is like something that you'd see in a movie. We can start with this drone shot on Zillow that shows the perfect lawn and of course tons of water frontage. Here is a sunset view looking the other direction over the grass and at the water. I'll flip through a couple of these pics fast to give you guys a sense of the style of the first house. This one is called Indian Spring. It was built back in 1999 with a super classy and sophisticated look, although as you guys know, it's not exactly my style. Then here's the other house. They call this house Villa Serena. This one was actually built back in 1913 and it's been restored, as you guys can see, with a pretty neutral finish palette. A philanthropist named Adrian Arst was the seller of this estate, and the buyer was the founder of Citadel, Ken Griffin. Now we need to head out of the United States for a second. We have a home in Hong Kong that sold for $111 million last year. This happened back in July. We don't know too much about this property other than it was reported to be a 6-bedroom mansion with 8,032 square feet in an area called Shousen Hill. This Shousen Hill neighborhood is one of the ritziest areas to live within Hong Kong. And then the location of this specific house is in a neighborhood called 15 Shousen. It's an ultra luxury community of just 15 homes. This aerial shot from the company's website shows us the 15 homes. There's 6 larger ones here on the right and then another 9 smaller ones in front. So my guess is that this $111 million sale is one of the larger ones. There's also a sales brochure here that goes into a ton of detail about the development. It shows some artist renderings. Literally every floor plan from every unit is in here too. This brochure is a few hundred pages long, so if you want to know more about this Shousen community, just check out their website. Back to the US and over to the West Coast, we have a pretty private deal at 10231 Charing Cross Road that closed in in August of 2022 for $120 million. The story on this one is also a bit hard to piece together, but reports say that the purchase included a 12,000 square foot mansion that's in the process of being completed, and this was part of a larger deal that combined a couple of lots in this super prestigious location. I'm sure this story is ringing a bell for some of you guys. We talked about this deal when it closed last year. We still don't have any photos of the finished house yet, but the property is 4 contiguous acres that are directly across the street from the Playboy Mansion, which is pretty insane. Snapchat CEO Evan Spiegel bought this property with his wife from the British billionaire Ian Livingstone. I'm sure it's going to be a crazy compound when it's finished. Next up is the house that I'm sure everybody is waiting to hear about. It's probably the most infamous real estate deal to have ever closed. Yes, we're talking about the one in Bel Air, which sold for $141 million back in March of 2022. This one-of-a-kind property clocked in at 105,000 square feet with 21 bedrooms, 49 bathrooms, and literally everything that you could ever need in a house and then some. And while the developer Niall Niami's original plan was to sell this house for $500 million, he never saw that come to fruition, but he still built the 3rd most expensive house sold in 2022. I know there are a ton of haters out there who really rag on this property, but when you compare this place to every other house on our list today, you guys have to admit this deal is kind of where you get the most bang for your buck. Fashion Nova CEO Richard Sagian was the buyer of this one, and while the seller was technically real estate developer Niall Niami's LLC, this sale happened through a bankruptcy auction. We need to leave the United States one more time to look at the 2nd most expensive sale of the year. This time we are headed to Dubai to look at a luxury villa on Palm Jumeirah that just sold for $163.45 million. Palm Jumeirah is a collection of artificial islands in Dubai. It's shaped like a tree, and it's known worldwide for being filled with expensive real estate, fancy hotels, and restaurants. And the real estate scene around there really has been heating up for a while, with billionaires flocking to the island and prices expected to continue to surge. Anyway, back to the record-breaking deal. This one was penned and recorded by the Dubai Land Department to purchase land worth $163.4 million US. It's a private deal, so unfortunately no photos of the property itself. Plus, originally, the buyer was unnamed too, but AGBI later reported that Indian billionaire Mukesh Ambani was the buyer of this island mega mansion. You guys might be familiar with Mukesh's name. He's the same one who lives in that 400,000 square foot skyscraper in Mumbai that is estimated to be worth around $2 billion. So for somebody like Mukesh Ambani, buying a $163 million place in Dubai is kind of like chump change. Last on our list today, and the home that takes the trophy for the most expensive home sold in 2022 is a mansion in Lantana, Florida at 2000 South Ocean Boulevard. This one sold on June 22nd for $173 million. This massive price makes for the most expensive home ever to have sold in Florida and the 3rd most expensive home to have ever sold in the US. And the buyer was none other than Larry Ellison. Reports are a bit mixed on the specs here, but according to the Realtor.com listing, the house has 21 bedrooms, 29 bathrooms, and about 34,000 square feet. It's sitting on a 16.6 acre lot with about 1,200 feet of water frontage on either side of the property. And thankfully, we still have access to the photos on this one too, so let's check them out. The drone shots are funny because the property is so lush that you can't really make out much of what's going on, but you can see what looks like a main house, then a second house, and then a 3rd guest house or a pool over here on the left. Even with all of that vegetation, you can still see out to the water though from your balconies of the main house. The outside of the house looks like this. Again, it's not my style at all, but it's also not my house. Here is one of the many seating areas with a wall of windows looking out to a swimming pool. We've got a massive outdoor lounge area with a bar. Here's the dining room. Big dining room table with room for like 16 people. This would be your office, which if this was my office, I think I'd like to have that chair facing out the window. That's just me though. Here appears to be the main living room with a big comfy couch and some interesting ceiling detail. Of course, the home has a tennis court. Then they round it out with another drone shot of this trophy property. This house might not be my style, but it's big, it's got the views, it's got the privacy, and it's got all of the amenities. It basically checks every box that you need to check for a billionaire. Looking at Zillow, there are still at least 10 other homes across the US alone that are still for for sale in that $100 million plus price point. So something tells me we're going to see another big year ahead with these ultra luxury sales. Yeah, we might be headed into a recession, but the rich are always looking for ways to get richer, and owning luxury real estate is a great way to do that. I'll see you guys next time.